hope that my vlogging finds you well. We're smack dab in the middle of a weekend, so second week in Lent, so I went to a fish fry again last night. I really only like cod when they do the fish fries. I don't like it when they do other things, so I had to make sure that I go to a reputable place with cod. Halibut would be great, but gotta do what you gotta do. So I'm up to 946 subscribers. I don't like to call you guys subscribers because I feel like you guys are friends. You guys have all been so amazing to me, and you have no idea how much me regaining my voice on so many levels is helping me so much more than you know. You've all been so kind to me. Like I say, I have like a ratio of like 2% trolls. I love the way that you guys let me look at the backstory of things. Well, people will glance at my channel and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're a Chris Watts lover. Oh my gosh, and you're a Shanann hater, and oh my god, your voice is blood curdling." And it's like, no, 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 no. I just look at the backstory and the truth on the headlines, because the headlines are so misleading, and the headlines have always made a few people very rich, and a lot of people are cheated out of the truth and the facts that could bring healing to some and could provide lessons to others, so that the things that happen that are unthinkable can be more of a lesson, so that children everywhere, adults, anybody who's hurting doesn't need to hurt as much as we are in our society. As I spoke to you guys some in the beginning, about a year ago, something very terrible happened to my family, and re-aggravated a lot of my PTSD that I've had from a lifetime of abuse. And my family is healing because they don't have the PTSD issues that I do, but I had a really hard time with panic attacks in the beginning of it. Now that I'm coming upon the 1 year anniversary of it, the panic attacks are just so hard, because I'll remember something from the day that before it happened, and it's just a mess. So my panic attacks are terrible. So when I start to not be able to even breathe, I just turn on my recorder and I start talking, and I tell you guys about a story of me, or I tell you guys about headlines that I watch and the backstory that I find in them. And I love that you guys are all part of the truth and the solution, and that you see that, well, headlines might be black and white. There's the gray in the middle that is the truth and the facts, and together we find the truth. I'm a very small channel because I tell the truth. It doesn't sell headlines. It doesn't get the subscribers. It doesn't get that, fast, cheap money that the tragedy pimps get. But I even do backstories on what the tragedy pimps get. So if you ever want to know the backstory or the truth and the facts, come on down to my side. So anyway, thank you for getting me to 946. I love you all. And like I say, you guys help me more than you can imagine. So for the gift of you giving me your time, I hope that I'm doing well and giving you back some of the truth and the facts, so you know what's going on YouTube and in the rest of the world. So something that happened, well, all eyes were on the Idaho 4, as the Idaho 4 tragedy. But so I was born in Spokane, Washington, and as I've explained, where the Idaho 4 happened is very close to my hometown. So Spokane is kind of on the border of Idaho, and you hop, skip it, and jump over, and then you're in Coeur d'Alene. And living in Eastern Washington and growing up, we'd go to the college parties, and my stepfather from hell is basically a Brian Koberger, because he went to the same school Wazoo that Brian Koberger did, lived in the apartments on campus. Not on campus, but off campus in Pullman, where Brian Koberger did. So it's like I'm looking at this and going, oh my gosh, just hits on so many levels. And I hear the news stations and see the reporters, and it's just also familiar. I don't live anywhere near there now. But all eyes were on Idaho. And I've done a little bit of coverage on Idaho, but I really stay back and refrain from talking about anything that isn't helpful, as there is a gag order. So hope I have you caught up on that. Now, after I left Washington State, I moved down to Southern California for a little bit and also lived in Las Vegas. Moved over to Las Vegas for law school. Long story in that I got very, very sick. My husband, who had retired from the Navy, started working in real estate. So he started working in home mortgages, and so that was in that 2006 time frame. And we lived in a city called Riverside. We were on the border of Corona, and Riverside also borders LA, and so it borders LA and Corona. It's just right there. And this terrible, terrible thing happened in Riverside. I looked it up, and it's literally 3 minutes from where I lived in Riverside. My house was similar to this one here. So while all eyes were on Idaho, the Idaho 4 that happened, the Idaho 4 happened on November 13th, 2022, okay? So all eyes were there, and nobody really even noticed what happened on November 25th, when this absolute horrible monster who was a state trooper drove his horrible catfishing ass from the area around Richmond, Virginia to Riverside, California. He went in, and like I said, I know this neighborhood well. My house, which was 3 minutes away from here, was similar. You have the stucco roofs, and it's a nice area. It's a little bit. Riverside is the kind of place where there's the bad side of Riverside that borders LA. Okay, so you know the area is not to go. This is not in that area. This is in the nicer area where you kind of have Corona. You have Irvine not too far away. You're about an hour from San Diego and the beach, and you're a little bit out of San Bernardino, which is where I went to college for a little bit out there. Our house was very similar, where it was in a cul-de-sac, and you have this back. And ours was a 5,500 square foot home, which was very common for the area. Just your nice big family home with 2 big, huge family rooms. Your yards aren't very big, but they're big enough to put a pool if you should want. Our neighbors did. We did not have one. But it's just perfect. It's in the middle of everything. The cost of living is not as high as your LA and Hollywood prices are, so you can have a good quality of living. The schools are okay, but you want to try to really look around. Good restaurants are easy to go to. And if you want to, like, we would hop into LA to go to the swap meet at the Rose Bowl, or I'd drive the kids down to SeaWorld almost every day that I could, and just go down the Pacific Highway, which is so easy to get. So this family had basically been doing this wonderful family here. And by all accounts, everybody said this family was the family that everybody aspires to. The home was owned by Mark and Sherie Winneck, and Mark was 69 and Sherie was 65. And they had their daughter, Brooke, who was a 38-year-old single mother of 2 girls living there. That's the kind of family they were. They supported their daughter when she was a struggling single mom and had her move in. So you've got the 2 grandparents, you've got Mark and Sherie, you've got Brooke, and then you've got 2 teenagers. So you've got a little bit of everything in that house. You've got teenagers, you've got an adult maybe dating, single mom, and you got the grandma and grandpa that are just everything. And the neighborhood loved this family. The community loved this family. If you go and you listen to the daughter who survived, not Brooke, her sister. So it was about, what did I say? It's about 11 a.m. And one of the neighbors looked outside. November 25th, 2022. I can't remember when Thanksgiving was of last year, but right around Thanksgiving time. And the weather around the time of that, just because I know, it's like you get the Santa Ana winds and whatnot. It's a mild temperature, so your Thanksgiving and your Christmases are not really going to have snow, but it's going to be pretty mild weather. More in your 50s. You can drop down to the high 30s, and then you can go up to the 60s, but it's just a very mild area. The Santa Anas are something else. They're just this low, weird wind that can kind of feel like a convection oven. And so that's kind of how I imagine the day was. And Mark and Sherie Winneck I think they had 2 daughters as well as their daughter had 2. And then their surviving daughter, I don't know how many kids she has, but neighbor looks outside. She sees a red car that doesn't look right. So she's looking at it and she thought it was stolen. It's honestly, this is on the area where it borders LA and whatnot, and a stolen car just doesn't look right. A car that just doesn't look right in that neighborhood, she could easily think was stolen and dumped, right? So this neighbor's looking out, and she's getting ready to take a picture of this red car that looks out of place when she notices the 15-year-old teenager barefoot, crying, with a man who's wearing a face mask and a long black trench coat. So the 15-year-old notices the neighbor looking out to take a picture of the red car. She looks up and tries to mouth something, but the neighbor doesn't understand. So the neighbor's taking this all in. This car that doesn't look right. This man that is walking the teenager, the 15-year-old, who's crying, barefoot, walking her to his car, this red car that's out of place she's never seen, close-knit neighborhood. She's looking at it, doesn't get it. She's trying to take it all in when she starts to see smoke come from the house. And the guy in the red car takes off with the teenager. Neighbor notices the house is on fire, calls 911. But then also called the other daughter. So the other daughter is at the supermarket. And she gets this call from this neighbor saying, hey, your house is on fire. 11 o'clock in the morning, your house is on fire. And she's like, what? Where's mom and dad? And the neighbor's like, I don't know if they're in there or not. I just see this fire. I don't know. And your niece was crying and she was barefoot and she was getting into a red car. She's like, what? She's like, I don't know. So she rushes home. House is engulfed in flames. Okay? Nobody's coming out of that house. Nobody's coming out of that house because former state trooper and piece of shit deputy, he was a deputy at the time of his death, but was a state patrolman, Austin Lee Edwards, 28-year-old, known to wear his trench coat and be strange and creepy to everybody that came in contact with him, had shot everybody who was in that house and kidnapped the teenager. He shot Mark and Sherie, the grandparents, and he shot Brooke, the mom, so that he could take the 15-year-old. Basically, he was going to take that 15-year-old, and anybody who stood in the way was going to get killed. And he killed him with his, I believe, service weapon. They didn't say it or not, if that was the weapon or not. Some say it was a shotgun. So I'm not sure if it was a shotgun or his deputy service gun, but there's not a lot out there. There's nothing on this horrific triple homicide by this state trooper turned deputy that drove from Virginia to Riverside. Take this girl. I've been waiting for the headlines to show it more. I've been waiting for the police report to come out. I've been waiting for the autopsies to see so that I can put together a good report. But it's been months now and nothing is coming out. There seems to be some kind of questions going on about how he was indeed hired and a couple other things. So there's something fishy going on. Now, my mind, I see the headlines and I see that 3 people were shot and a 15-year-old was kidnapped. House is set on fire. It's November 25th and the whole country is watching the Idaho 4 and there's no suspects. Who killed these 4 college students in Idaho? So I'm like, this is the guy. This is some wanker policeman who's on a rampage because he went and killed 4 college-age kids in Idaho and then goes down to Riverside, kills the whole family, and steals a 15-year-old. This is their guy. This is their Idaho guy. Because Brian Koberger wasn't even on the radar at that time. So I'm going, what in the hell is this? Why no one's talking about it? Because they think that this is this and this is this? Well, apparently not. But anyway. This creep had recently sold his home and bought a new home in the Virginia area with a full price offer to the seller. The seller was really happy. He'd only had the house for sale for a couple of weeks. And gets this full price offer from this state patrolman who lives out of the area. And the state patrolman says, hey, I want to buy the house. I'm not going to, say anything about price or anything. It's all fine. I'm just going to get the financing. I want the house, but I can't come and see it. What I need from you is to give me a video of the basement. I want all of the dimensions and specs of the basement and a video of you walking through the basement. And then it's a signed, sealed, and delivered deal. So the seller's like, all right, great. I'm selling my house. He wants a video of the basement. Okay, no biggie. Austin Lee Edwards, 28-year-old, wearing a black trench coat, moves into the neighborhood, and he immediately blacks out all of the windows and puts, darkening curtains, etc., etc. And it was only there for a little while, but it was enough, like neighbors will say, that he was strange and creepy, walking around with a trench coat, okay? They knew he was a stater, so you know what? Maybe people thought he works nights and wants the house to be dark so he can sleep. Maybe. But he quit his job as a state trooper and became a deputy. He then had a sheriff's issued truck to drive home, so maybe they thought the same thing. Maybe he's a day sleeper. I'm a day sleeper because of other issues, because the nights are horrible when you have panic attacks. But anyway, this creep was creating, essentially, a place to keep this 15-year-old. He catfished her. He was telling this 15-year-old girl that he was a 17-year-old boy, hot boy, Justin Bieber type, and she gave him her address and phone number, etc., which he would have been able to find anyway because he's a state trooper. He, doesn't take much to look. There are reports that she did try to stop talking to him and he didn't take no for an answer. But as you put the pieces together, you see that he went out there to kidnap her, bring her back, put her in that basement that he had all prepared, All the windows are shaded and everything. Who's going to suspect that this state patrolman turned local deputy has a 15-year-old hostage in his basement? He thought he had the perfect plan. He had reportedly went through the Virginia State Police Academy in 2021. He was assigned to the Richmond area as a trooper. He worked there for about 9 months and he resigned in October and became a Washington County deputy November 16th. So just 10 days before he did this. Drove across the country posing as this 17-year-old catfish. So who knows how he got access? Who knows if he was wearing his uniform or whatever. Those things aren't there. He did not take his deputy vehicle. He took this red car. And so he catfished this girl. Catfishing is defined as somebody posing as somebody else for predatory reasons. They often flirt. It begins like a flirty relationship. It's a predator giving a false identity, and it's a ruse created to lure somebody into a type of relationship. Most people in the catfishing relationship do not meet, even though these relationships can go on for years. Good, smart, loving kids can be fooled. They absolutely can be fooled and lured. It's not these kids going in trying to, find somebody. It's kids just doing what they should be doing. They're on the computer for their homework. They're on the computer for this and that. And they get in a chat room and somebody who'd been watching them, obviously, these catfish sit there and they watch the behaviors online and they start to see people who maybe a little bit lonely, maybe are on the computer at different times, maybe suspect that the parents aren't able to see what's going on if they're on at all hours of the night. Who knows? Who knows how they watch and lure children? But they sure do. I tried to always keep the computers in the family room so that at least I could always walk by. But laptops, handheld technology is there, and you can think you're doing everything, and unfortunately the predators have other things in mind, and sadly that's what happened. So you have this loving home where they're doing everything right, they're loved in the community, and you've got some monster across the country who's not looking like a suspect to anybody because he's in law enforcement, posing as a 17-year-old, luring this 15-year-old girl online. So he gets her address. He decides one of these days he's just gonna go and do what he did. He found her information, like I said, which wouldn't be hard. I mean, as a parent, here's the thing, is that how careful can you be? Look at your Facebook, look at your Instagram, look at what everybody posts. They post their family that they're proud of. But then you have monsters like this who are watching what you're posting. They're watching that you're on vacation. And they know that little Sally must be at home. How do they know who little Sally is? Well, because they saw her playing basketball and they saw her last name on the jersey that you posted about how proud you are. And she got all these points. So then they know that they're alone. Those things you don't even think about. So like I tried to be like, well, if you don't know people in real life, because that's what Nancy Grace says too. Nancy Grace says that she has her rules that, if you don't know the person in real life, then you can't be on the computer with them. Well, doesn't work. You try the best you can, but just things like this happen, and it's so, so sad to just imagine this family right around the holidays being annihilated because this disgusting creep. I put a picture of him on my community page as a teaser for this story I was going to tell you. So if you haven't popped over to my community page, you can see what he looks like. And you can see that he does not look anything like a 17-year-old boy. He's a 28-year-old that looks like a 55-year-old creep. So after he shot the mom, dad, and the mom, so grandma, grandpa, 15-year-old saw her grandma, grandpa, and her mother shot in front of her. And he takes her whilst setting the house on fire. So he then was identified thanks to the neighbor. Because if the neighbor would not have seen that red car leave, who knows what they would have thought. They would have came in, thought that maybe there was a natural gas leak, whatever. It would have taken them a very long time to find and figure out who was left in that house. They might have thought that the grandma, grandpa, mom, and daughter all had perished. It would have taken a long time for them to even know that she was gone. And then why would they have thought that she was kidnapped? Close to LA, horrible things happen and families are killed because of drugs, gangs. They would have went in that direction with their line of thinking. I don't think they would have ever thought it was a catfish situation if this neighbor who saw this red car thought enough that she was looking at it and happened to see the little girl coming out at the same time. Just think if somebody would have seen the car leaving, was it Jamie Kloss? The one who was murdered in her home by the monster who saw her and started stalking her because one day he was behind her school bus. This was in Wisconsin, and this monster was behind the school bus and saw her get out of the bus once and walk up to her home. And I believe he even worked with the parents at the same factory. I think they worked at like Hillshire Farms or something. But anyway, he kept watching her getting off the bus. And then one night he decides, well, he wants to kidnap her. I think, wasn't it Jamie Kloss? Is that her name? I might be making up the name. I'll have to look. Either way, it was a girl who was kidnapped from Wisconsin about, 3 or 4 years ago. And this monster did the same thing. So he knocks on the door, and he has a shotgun at the door, the front door, and knocks in the middle of the night. And the dad, looks in the window and is like, not going to answer the door. And the guy shoots him with a shotgun right through the peephole, gains entry. The mom and I believe it was Jamie were in the bathroom hiding behind the shower curtain. Monster comes, shoots the mom too, steals who I believe is Jamie, and he kept her under his bed. Jamie's mom had tried to call 911 when she was in the shower. So the police were on their way. But it was in the middle of Wisconsin in the night. He passed the police. It was the only car on the road that passed the police. Months went by, and finally, who I believe was Jamie, got out. She crawled out from underneath the bed. She had all blocked with weights and stuff, and she ran out and found a neighbor and said who she was, and she was rescued. It was never revealed that they had passed a car that night, but as the case went through and the police reports came out, it was mentioned that a car passed them that night. They had stopped that car that night coming from where they had gotten this call. because they didn't know that she had been kidnapped. It took quite a while for everybody to figure out that she's missing as well. So very similar to this. Um, Now, it's interesting that he set fire to this house. As he's in law enforcement, you would think, oh, that's what he would do to cover up the scene. And obviously, not. If the neighbor had not seen the red car, he would have thought he was buying time. And this makes me wonder why, because Brian Koberger in Idaho, um, same kind of thing where he was a wanker, wanted to become a police officer, but was not hired, pursuing his degree in criminology. I think his doctorate, right? Um, I think he already had his bachelor's, so he was in a doctoral program for criminology, I believe. Anyway, it makes me wonder why Brian didn't set the Idaho 4 house on fire as he left. Makes you more suspicious than ever about the two surviving ones. If he something going on with the one that is rumored. But anyway, I'm not going to go down there. I'm not going to do that. But just the fire thing and the police thing, it makes me wonder. And so anyway, when this creep started his getaway, because the neighbor called and said to be on the lookout for this red car, she probably took a picture of it so the cops were able to put a bolo out on it. And they saw it. They made contact with this car in the San Bernardino area. So San Bernardino is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Riverside here. Like I was talking, I was going to Argosy University there. So went on Saturday mornings. There was no traffic. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from there. I'd say like maybe 20 miles, 20 minutes. And San Bernardino, San Berdoo is what they call it, is a big county and it has little towns within it. So it was first reported that he was killed in Needles, but he was actually killed in Kelso in San Bernardino County, that area. So he's in this high-speed chase with the cops. He gets out, or they pivot him. We don't know because there's so little information out here. He gets out and starts firing on his coworkers, and he does have his service weapon for this. He's firing on his coworkers. And they're shooting back, but they did not kill him, which was initially reported. He killed himself with his service weapon from the deputy's office that he had just started 10 days before. So this poor little girl, this poor 15-year-old girl, who had her mom, grandma, and grandpa killed in front of her, now has this creep do this in front of her, and she's in a high-speed chase. There's not much out there about this girl at all. Of course, she's not going to be named because she's 15. I was waiting for the information to come out about the catfishing and to see more. But like I'm saying, I'm waiting, and I've waited months now, 4 months watching this, and nothing is coming out. So I wanted to tell you guys about this and wonder if you guys had seen it and you're wondering about the backstory as well and why they're being so hush-hush about it. Certainly the girl is a victim, even if she fell for him and said she wanted to run away with him. She's not compliant in anything. She's completely innocent, but I just don't even know where to begin with how to feel like she's going to have some semblance of normalcy. My PTSD is in situations that were from abusers, and the situation that happened to our family is because of somebody who's mentally ill. And, thankfully nothing like this, but PTSD is still very real. And so what I go through with mine, which is relatively minor when you look at this, I pray for this girl. I have no idea how she's doing, how she's going to heal. Please send prayers for her. We don't know. 15-year-old girl, Winneck. We don't know. Her last name is Winneck. We don't know what her first name is. Maybe she'll always be kept quiet. Maybe they'll always keep her identity quiet. Obviously the locals will know. But her sister has never been named either, I don't think. But if you go and you listen to her aunt talk at the funeral, about what amazing and loving parents she had and her sister, and it's really amazing. I would suggest to do that. I'll try to find that and post the link. Um, One of the things that is curious is, okay, so this creep started the police academy July 6, 2021. So we go there. We go to the 9 months, which gets us. So he started the police academy in July, graduates January 21, 2022. Works from, end of January to October 28th when he quits as a state trooper. So he essentially worked for 9 months there, quits, just resigns. Is there a backstory there? Was he acting like a turd on the job there? Did they catch him doing something inappropriate? Was he catfishing there? What happened that made him resign? This is what I want to know, because this is how they're packaging it up. This is how they're packaging it up. This turd is they're saying that he resigned. Did he really? Or was he in a position where they told him that he was going to be fired, so they offered him the opportunity to resign before he was terminated and suggested that he go to a smaller, more rural agency to hone his skills and then come back in a couple of years? Who knows, right? Because if you had a job as a state trooper, you're 28. What had he done before he was 28, I wonder? He didn't have any complaints on the job as a state trooper from what they're saying. He did complain that he missed his family. So I can't see where his family lived in relation to where he was working as a state patrolman. But he quit on October 28th and then goes and gets this job right away in the sheriff's department. And you wonder, what did that have to do with his plan? Was there a different shift he was working that he thought the different shift would be more conducive to him having a 15-year-old hostage in his home? As people started looking into this, they had the same questions, and they're going, okay, so he's a state patrolman for 9 months, quits, and then gets another job, is on the job for not even 10 days, decides to put the pedal to the metal and go to across the country to go and commit this triple homicide, brings a service weapon, kidnaps the girl. He might have gotten away with it. I mean, this girl, who knows what they would have thought? Maybe they would have thought that she went crazy and set the house on fire. This man could have gotten away with it, and then he could have just been this police officer on the job who has somebody in his basement. All of the things that had to have happened to make that neighbor look outside at that perfect moment in time are just the stuff of miracles. I mean, thank God she did that. As they started looking more into this, they found out that in 2016, so what? 5 years before he was in the Virginia State Police Academy in 2016, he got in a fight with his girlfriend, and he threatened to kill her, his father, and himself. And the police were called. He was detained and had a psych eval. Now, he was not charged with anything. It does not say that he was placed in a psychiatric facility, but it does say that he was detained and it had to have a mental evaluation. The police report and detaining should have been enough to have never allowed him to have become a state trooper, from what I can see, because they're asking the questions now. And how did he get hired? And why did he quit after 9 months as a state patrolman and then go somewhere else? What's going on here? Why we've got these things going on? And why did the psych eval, detainment, police report not come into things. Now, the way that it sounds like they tried to kind of cover for it is they said that, oh, he did not tell them. He was not straightforward about what had happened. The LA Times went and got the report and they found different. The LA Times shows that the records show that he did bring it up, that he did disclose that in 2016 he had a mental health incident. What's going on now is they're saying, okay, who dropped the ball then? Who put him in a position of power given this mental health incident? The governor, Virginia governor, I can't remember the last name. Which governor is it in Virginia? The Virginia governor now wants the attorney general's office to do some investigation to find out exactly what went wrong. And they're basically saying this was human error, that it should have been caught and it wasn't. Well, what does that do for the situation that there is now, you know? So this happened on the 25th. An eyewitness to his house in Virginia saw two individuals come to his house in Virginia. So the night of the incident. So nobody knows that he did it, you know. That point, it wasn't all over the country to that point. Or was it? Because this all happened at 11 a.m. California time. So 11 a.m. West Coast time. This neighbor in Virginia is looking at the trooper deputy's home and sees two men come and take the sheriff's deputy truck. The sheriff truck, sees them, so like they're plainclothes individuals. By the sounds that they're, by the sound of it, they were making it doesn't look like it was law enforcement coming. And they're saying that it was like two men came and took the sheriff vehicle and went in his house and took two garbage bags full of items. The search warrant for his house was not issued until the next day. So there's a lot going on in this backstory going, who were these two individuals? And now it turns out that it was his co-workers or two other deputies. So there's a lot of backstory going on. What did they find? What did they go in there and find that they did not want the rest of the department to find the next day in a search warrant? Why, if they wanted to get the sheriff's vehicle and this information, why didn't they get a search warrant for that night? What were they essentially getting illegally? The creep had already killed himself. So it's not like, oh, he's in jail and there's something there. What else was he into? I mean, was this a CP, child? I don't want to say the word and get in trouble, but you know what I mean? Was he into some other things with a couple other officers? What was going on? What went down here? So when I keep looking, the LA Times is covering this, but they don't have much to go on, it seems. This headline here from the LA Times, it says, horrifying scene at Riverside home where police say a catfishing of teen led to 3 killings. Well, that's the understatement of the year, because it's just, oh, and look at on the personalized plates of this black truck, it says Nan Boop. So I wonder if Grandma was Nana and Grandpa was Boop. So it's like, it says Nan Boop. And they got this woman here she's got a little junk in the trunk there. Maybe she looks like a runner. She's all there, and she's looking at the memorial there, and all those Jesus candles there, those ones that you can buy. Little backstory here. My aunt worked at the local supermarket, and I remember visiting her once, And the police were there because they were busting this guy who had tried to steal one of those Jesus candles. There, see those ones that are white? He tried to steal a Jesus candle by sticking it down his pants. I mean, the ladies were like, "Is there a Jesus candle in your pants, or are you excited to see me?" Anyway. So they say neighbors describe a horrifying scene as a man who police say catfished a teenage girl arrived at her family's home in Riverside on Friday, killing 3 relatives and then leaving with her and the home on fire. 3 relatives, her mom, her grandma, and grandpa. It says neighbors said on Monday they saw the suspect's vehicle parked a few doors from the house and heard arguing from the home. Then the man fled with the girl as a fire burned inside. So they had heard. I did not know that until I just pulled up this article to show you guys the house. The smell of ash lingered in the quiet cul-de-sac Monday, and a wooden cross was nailed to one of the broken windows that was boarded up after the fire. Oh, okay. I did not. Okay, so see that cross on that window? I didn't know if that was there to support that board or not. That's really, really awesome that they did that, as a tribute then. It says Antonio Castro was out when the attack took place, but said his home camera alerted him of smoke in the neighborhood, and he rushed back. He found smoke rising from his neighbor's home and saw 3 bodies in the front yard. What? So I wonder if the police or the firemen pulled them out. So, wow. Police arrived at the 11200 block of Price Court to see smoke pouring from the home. Officer Ryan Railsback, a spokesman for the Riverside Police Department. Firefighters were extinguishing the blaze when they discovered the bodies of a man and 2 women inside the house, Railsback said. The victims were identified as Mark Winneck, 69, his wife Sherie Winneck, 65, and their daughter Brooke Winneck, 38. Investigators have determined that the outdoor disturbance involved a teenager. The outdoor disturbance? Ah. So did he kill them when they were outside? Wait a minute, because it says outdoor disturbance. So firefighters were extinguishing the blaze when they discovered the bodies of a man and 2 women inside the house. Yeah, so they were inside. It says investigators have determined that the outdoor disturbance. So was that her, the teenage girl, was she screaming? And the neighbor who saw it from inside her house thought she was mouthing something, but she was actually screaming? Would be. So it says investigators have determined that the outdoor disturbance involved a teenager who lived in the house, Railsback said. The man she was with, I wouldn't call him a man. Called a piece of dog shit. Austin Lee Edwards, 28, a law enforcement officer from North Chesterfield, Virginia, was identified as the main suspect in the 3 deaths, he said. Edwards was tracked Friday evening to San Bernardino County, where he was fatally shot by sheriff's deputies in Kelso after firing a gun at officers, law enforcement officials said. The girl was not harmed. Okay, so I have actually found that is misinformation, that it was said that the law enforcement shot him, but that is not true. It is verified that he did kill himself with his service revolver. Again, thank God the girl was not harmed. And it said earlier authorities reported that Edwards had been killed in needles. And yeah, that's what I said. I said that. Riverside police detectives determined that Edwards had met the teen online and misrepresented who he was, Railsback said. Detectives determined Edwards had met the female teenager through the common form of online deception known as catfishing, where someone pretends to be a different person than they actually are, authorities said in the release. It is believed Edwards had developed an online relationship with the teen and obtained her personal information. He traveled from Virginia to Riverside, where he parked his car in a neighbor's driveway and walked to the teen's home. Mark, Sherie, and Brooke Winneck lived in the home with Brooke's two teen daughters. Their lives seemed to revolve around the two young girls, Castro said. They were grandparents, so everything they did for the two girls, he said. Mark, Sherie, and Brooke were loving people who didn't deserve this tragedy, the Winneck family wrote in a public statement Monday. They thanked people for love, support, prayers, and patience during this horrific time in our lives, and said donations could be made to the family's GoFundMe campaign. The cause and manner of the three deaths are under investigation, but police believe Edwards killed the teen's grandfather, grandmother, and mother before taking her vehicle to his vehicle and driving away, according to officials. Edwards was formerly employed by the Virginia State Police and had recently been hired as a deputy for the Washington County Sheriff's Office in Virginia, officials said. Edwards completed training with the Virginia State Police Academy in January, according to a statement from Washington County Sheriff Blake Andes, and was hired as a state patrol deputy with the sheriff's office in rural southwest Virginia on November 16th, less than 10 days before he arrived in Riverside and killed the Winnecks before the shootout with local law enforcement, officials say. Andy said Edwards had started orientation at his agency and had been assigned to the patrol division. It's shocking and sad to the entire law enforcement community that such an evil and wicked person could infiltrate law enforcement while concealing his true identity as a computer predator and murderer, Andy said in a statement. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Winneck family, their friends, officers, and all of those affected by this heinous crime. Andy, is a spokesperson for the Virginia State Police, said none of Edwards' prior employers had disclosed issues. Corinne Geller, the state police spokesman, said that during Edwards' 15-month tenure here, he never exhibited any behaviors to trigger any internal administrative or criminal investigations. During his background and psychological tests, there weren't any indicators of concern, she said. Okay, so they're saying 15-month tenure. So so they're counting the academy and his 9-month working as a state police, state trooper. So they count that whole 15 months, whereas I was seeing it as the 9 months, but they count the academy time as well. Edwards resigned from the Virginia State Police on October 28th, according to Geller, and started with the sheriff's office about 3 weeks later. Friends and family of the three who died gathered over the weekend to remember their loved ones, according to the Press Enterprise. Ron Smith told the Press Enterprise that Mark Winneck was a close friend, and the deaths came as a shock. Smith said Winneck was a beloved figure in the Inland Empire sports, having coached baseball for many years at area high schools, including Corona and Arlington. Mark was a man who was huge in the softball and baseball coaching ranks, Smith said. You couldn't ask for a better friend than Mark. Sherie Lazzini told the Press Enterprise that she met Winneck in 1994 when he asked to join her softball coaching staff at La Sierra High School in Riverside while his daughters were attending. She said they had remained close. That's where my kids were going to go. They were little when we were in California. He was a man dedicated to helping student athletes, Lazzarini said. I don't want the legacy to be what's happened because he was a really special man. The GoFundMe campaign called Mark Winneck a loving father, grandfather, uncle, brother, and coach, said Sherie Winneck. Caring mother, grandfather, grandmother, sister, and aunt who cherished spending time with her family. The page said, Brooke Winneck was a beloved single mother with the biggest heart. Ugh, freaking creep, man. Let me see here. See if I can show you a picture of this freaking. Yep. Oh, here's his. Here's the picture of this creep. There you go. You just keep that picture handy, and then when your teenage daughter is acting weird, trying to cover up the computer, acting like she's hot shit, then make sure that she knows who she's talking to, because it could be this kind of guy on the other end. Should be enough to scare all teenage girls off of the computer for quite a while. It's an awfully big forehead. Could have had a career in just going around with an advertisement on that thing and walking up and down the streets. Would have made a lot more money. But anyway. So maybe they're holding all of the investigation until the Attorney General's office can figure out a good cover story as to why they hired this creep. Who knows? I'm wondering if you guys have heard much about the story. Let me know in the comments if you had not heard about it, if you think that it is not being discussed because it's being investigated by people who kind of want to cover up their mistake, or if this just wasn't a story because the Idaho 4 was so much bigger at the time. Or if you've heard of it and you know more details than what I can find. I'd like to know that too. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Thanks again. Bye-bye.